Hi, glad to have you here with the Cat and Sam show uh podcast. Did I just say show? Uh anyway, we're glad to have you here and today I think we're going to continue a conversation we were having about mistakes and um I just want to say that, people when you're in it and you realize that this is a mistake, uh, you're not doing well and you don't know how to get out, and you finally get up enough courage to get out, you can't make decisions. And I remember one time sitting across from a friend of mine who was asking me if I wanted to uh, work with work with him and work for him. And I said, I I don't know if I can do that right at the moment. And he kept coming about it in different ways to try to square me down. And he said, "Damn it, woman, just make a decision." And I was kind of thrown back about it because I didn't like him snapping at me. That made me uncomfortable. And it kind of felt a little bit good that in my indecision, I wasn't making a decision. That I ended up not working for him, and that was fine. But people don't talk about that indecision and coming out of these relationships with the inability to not think properly, the inability to where your memory is kind of messed up because of what they used to term word salad, right? Where they say a little bit of truth in something, but not all the truth, and you know that something is wrong with the statements they're making, and you're constantly told that you're making mistakes. And the word mistake is problematic here in the United States. I think maybe everywhere in certain realms, but it has a connotation that I'm not good enough with it because I made a mistake. Uh, you simply didn't get the result that you wanted. Is really what that is. Um, and maybe you did get the result you wanted in the end. The uh, the product WD-40 is named WD-40, stands for water displacement. And the chemist that wanted to make that product made it. It took him 40 tries before he got the consistency of what he wanted. And so, if it would have been taken him 239, it would have been WD 239. And so I think in coming out of these relationships, we need to understand that while it might have been a mistake, there are things to be garnered from it to move forward because we can get stuck in not being good enough. And so, um, I feel like that's where that I work that needs to come in and the self work that needs to come in because so much is done against us in these relationships. What are your thoughts, Sam?
Well, I think firstly it's the understanding that like 9 times out of 10 you come out of these relationships and we know now that's the time you're most likely to be killed or die or whatever. You've been in crisis point for a long time. Just putting one foot in front of the other is enough and takes huge effort because of everything that's been done. And no, you can't think straight. So making decisions like reporting to the police, providing reliving it all instantly. You've just left it in order to give evidence. And, you know, with any other damage that was done, and that it's known that these relationships do damage to the psyche, and we understand that, but we don't give targets time to breathe, time to heal a little bit. First of all, you just need to be able to stop. You need to feel safe. You need to be able to start
Exhaustion.
to understand, just sheer exhaustion from on a level that I've certainly never experienced it. That is in cellular exhaustion. And that's why I say in the film about we understand it from war veterans and the techniques that are used in war scenarios by the CIA and people like that, because they work. They're effective in breaking somebody's down, breaking somebody's psyche and being, their personality, their whole functionality. That's what it does. It breaks down your functionality, and yet we expect survivors who are literally fleeing for their life, and if they've got children, they've got to care for those children as well. And if they put the slightest foot wrong or make a mistake, everybody's on them like a ton of bricks. You're lucky they're even standing upright. But I just thought that actually, it's about breaking functionality, isn't it? If it's keeping you just at that level where you can function at an automaton level, but you can't function fully, and you certainly can't function for yourself. Yeah.
Right. And everybody is, just, and then you have like the fantasy of what the good times like to drive in those relationships, in thinking that because the good times are so high that you just want those ones back, and you can't reason with why those are there, and you leave, and I don't know what I'm trying to say, but because it's failing me, but the highs are so high, and it's locked up in a fantasy. And the fantasy is what they drive in that love bombing part of the cycle. And then when everything blows up, you don't want any part of that. So that's like shooting yourself in the foot. You don't want any part of it. And you know that. And so when you leave, all of a sudden, the love bombing starts, or you're just wanting that feeling of having somebody close to you that was close to you in that fantasy kind of way, because it is a fantasy. It's not the reality of what it is. And you have to, one of the best things they did was make a list of the 5 worst things that happened, so that every time that fantasy came up, I looked at the list and said, I don't want any part of this. I don't want any part of what that was.
No, I mean, it is. It's all a fantasy. It's all a lie, unfortunately. But there's also what people call like the trauma bonding, and there is an addiction, and it is just not understanding. There's a part of your brain, body, soul, whatever that's run away from this, and the other is hankering after. It's like, but why? Why would you want even to give this person the time of day? And I won't pretend that I know all the official ins and outs, and maybe we can discuss this with our medical person, but it's I think you've been brainwashed to, well, you have been brainwashed to feel so dependent, and your functionality, your brain just isn't working the way that it should be and did before and does again once you've had the time. And I think the best thing that anybody, if somebody's wondering what they can do for somebody who's escaped abuse, it's be a buffer. Just be a buffer for them to be able to draw breath, start to process it themselves, because it does take an awful lot to process. So schools can do that. Schools can buffer, between the two parents and the child, or social care is supposed to do that, but it does the opposite. But any sort of friends and families, be a third party if you can, where so that the victim target doesn't have to isn't forced into that constant post separation contact, and that can just give the survivor just that little bit of breathing space, that little buffer. So that's one of the things that I've learned, and that's certainly what benefited me.
Well, yeah, I mean, give them some grace for what they've been through. I mean, we give grace to the vets and what they go through, and the same could be offered for your friend or your colleague, in what they're trying to go through in what they've uh, been through. I remember having arguments with a family member who, uh, it felt a lot like being in a car wash with those. Um, you already know what I'm going to say, I bet, with those flaps that are in circles, and you're just getting hit from all sides, and you can't. Your brain can't process what is being said because it is so toxic in how that coercive control is used to cause such issue. I mean, I think that's what's interesting about what happens in domestic violence and abuse homes. In the same kind of thing happening, and your film describes it brilliantly. Um, I'll never forget the woman that called me and said, "Is that," after watching your film and saying, "Is that brainwashing?" And I said, she goes, "I thought it was brainwashing," and then I was like, "Oh no," and I said, "No, that's brainwashing. That is what happens. It is meant to drive the system so that you don't want to you don't want to combat it." That the family member that I was talking about was telling me that religiously I wasn't good enough. I wasn't being a good Christian, and no matter what I said and how I said it to him, he was telling me, "Nope, you're not doing it, and if you don't get it right, you're gonna be going to hell," and just all these things. And I cried for weeks until I was talking to someone, and they were like, "You're none of those things." And I mean, that's how you can help victims is to stand in the reality of who you knew them to be, who you know them to be. Uh, One of my best friends growing up uh, called her talking to her, and she said, um, "I am behind you 100%. And whatever you decide to do, I'm right there with you. However long it takes you to get where you need to get, I will be here and I will stand with you." And everything that she said to me in about 10 minutes, I carried with me in that conversation, and didn't have a conversation with her again for another year, year and a half. Um, Not because we don't care about each other, not because she knew that if I had trouble, I would call her, but just the fact that she stood. And workplaces could do this, and judicial systems could do this, and um, police stations could do this, and companies could do this, and churches could do this. And, it's just giving somebody grace instead of condemning them because they haven't done what you think they should do and how they should do it.
Having
And
never
you know,
been
and
in
that's
that
why,
position.
right. And that, that's why we love to talk, is because we think about, our situations and where we came from, and we just want to give light, which is why
No,
I
absolutely.
love chatting with you, my friend.
I love chatting with you too. Now, and like, there's no, like, people wanting there to be the perfect victim. Going back to the mistakes thing, if you're
Right.
not the perfect person, and that was, I think, part of why Sarah Everard, a girl who was murdered by a police officer over here, why that took so much, that caught people's imagination so much and caught their passion and their eye, was she had done nothing wrong. There was nothing about, you couldn't call her out as a victim. You couldn't. There was no victim blaming could happen, although apparently it did. Even still, like people saying, well, she should have refused to have got in the van. He was a police officer, it was lockdown or whatever, and that feeds into how we're brought up and how you just you don't question certain people and authority and things like that. But I've lost my thread on that one, so I'll have to come back to it. But what I keep thinking about is what this level. Oh, that was it. We blame ourselves, and I said to her, there is no other reason. There's nothing that we do that deliberately attracts or likes or whatever. That's abuse. It's and I think that's something that, not that we're perfect, not that we don't ever do anything wrong. It's not that. Nobody revels in being abused, and the level of stress that we're constantly kept in, which I'm sure was a deliberate part of it, like keeping you sleepless and things like that. And it physically damages the body. Being under that level of stress constantly, 24/7, even when they're not there, has to do physical damage. And this is why I am a great believer I'd love to speak to when we speak later on, is the physical violence that is done to our bodies and our brains by the levels of stress that we're kept under deliberately. And I think this is part of post-separation abuse. So that comes into the economic abuse. If the thing of parental undermining and the co-parenting and things like that, where the keep bringing of vexatious court cases, is to keep you under stress. And sometimes they keep people under such stress that they end up committing suicide for that same reason that you just give up asking to put the cup in the dishwasher, is because you go, I'll just do it. Because, I'll just do it. He wants me dead, I'll just do it.
It's almost easier just to.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's that giving up. But you know, the amount we understand stress in every other scenario, and how it impacts bodies, how it impacts mind, how it has lifelong, how it can trigger illnesses, proper other illnesses like cancers and dementia and things like that. But somehow we exclude it, or it's just not been taken on board yet, but it's excluded in domestic abuse. So you're just supposed to spring back. Yay, I'm free, I'm out. No. Your body cellularly needs to heal. Your mind needs to heal. You need to be able to sleep properly and trust that you can sleep and not be woken up, or if you have slept, that you're not going to be berated in the morning for having moved too much or breathed in the wrong way or given off too much heat or whatever their particular. This is the goalpost moving and the mistake thing. I mean, how can you control what the body heat that your body gives off at night? But do they move out of the bedroom? No. And they won't let you move out of the bedroom. So it's like whenever you come up with a solution, it's not that we don't come up with solutions, but the more we come up with solutions, that's when they move the goalposts, so that nothing is ever right.
Right, but that all of what you're saying, most of what you're saying is about that autonomy. Because if they can get you to be off center, then
And
they
then,
have.
yeah. And they do that by going back to the thing that you were talking about, which is the love. You know, the really high, wonderful bits, and then you're mad. You're thinking, well, that was a blip. We've got over that, and then there's another blip, and another blip, and another blip. But because you kept in this whirlwind, you don't get the chance to just step back, breathe, and go, I can see the bigger picture now. You're kept on this hamster wheel. And I think when we leave, we're still on that hamster wheel. It takes time because of the levels of stress, and they do tend to up the abuse significantly once you leave. And do whatever. Some move on exceptionally quickly, even before, and most of them have somebody in the wings or have been unfaithful anyway. That's kind of pretty much given usually, apparently. So, but there's no mourning of a relationship that's gone wrong. There's no, and it's natural for us to want to try and fix something. A normal, like you said, you know, if you were upset with me, I care about you. And if I'd done something to upset you, it's normal to say, have I upset you? And if I have, what can we do to sort it out? That's a normal, healthy relationship. That isn't. But when you get to domestic abuse, that's seen as a weakness in us, the victims, that we didn't just go out the door. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. But because they always start off so wonderfully, of course you want to try and salvage that or work through, and nothing's ever going to be perfect all of the time anyway, and we know that.
Yeah, but it's so different because I mean the example you just gave is exactly it is the care that you have and the empathy that you have, that you share with your friends in the care of them, that they actually use to pull you down. So a young woman that I know they're going to have a big night coming up, and there was a huge fight in the morning. So much so that they decided that they didn't even know they wanted to she didn't even know that she wanted to do what was going on that night. And there was a lot of people, hundreds of people coming to this event. And it was a party that they were putting on. And at the party is when he decided to give her the ring and ask her to marry him in front of everybody. So in the morning, she was in the depths of her soul, trying to understand what she was in and that she didn't want to be in this anymore, only to be brought up to the epitome of giving her that fairy tale story. And
but in
then
front of everybody.
the morning,
That's
right,
he's
and then
seen as this Prince Charming, and look, oh my God, yeah.
he did all of this and prepared all this, and she's forgotten what happened in that morning. That day now is the day that he asked me to marry him. And it was probably about the dishwasher.
Yeah. But that bringing her down to bring her up is deliberate, but that's a known pattern. That's another known pattern. And also doing that kind of thing. So there's an event that's really important to her. So to create that drama and that to the point where she's on her knees. So before a big event means that, so they can do it before job interviews, they can do it before parties, they can do it before Christmas, so that you are on your knees, and certainly to everybody else, you're the one that's in a mood, you're the one that's teary or just seems unstable in some way, you know? So it all feeds their narrative, and it's all deliberate.
Right. And this was actually done before a big holiday thing with family coming and her introducing him to the rest of the family and how wonderful it would be. And she went ahead and still planning.
Well, how can she say no as well?
Right.
In
Because if
front
she
of
says no,
everybody.
then, you know, and in the big picture, sure, she could say no and try to get away from this situation if she had the right kind of support. At the same time, she's got to deal with that constant being put up here and then taken down. And nobody can think in that.
No.
So
no, you can't, and you can't think straight, and to apart from literally sheer survival. The sheer survival, I don't know about you, but it was sheer survival instinct. That was it. You know, it's what I was operating on. At total exhaustion level. You know, and you're just thinking about the basics. The absolute basics.
she grew up in it, so it's her normal.
Yeah.
So then you get done with that. So
but here was her Prince Charming.
Exactly.
But he chose her, you know, he targeted her. And anybody that, like, we're all this is the thing, and this is this voice and this narrative that comes at us time and time again of there is not a single soul walks this earth that hasn't got a chink, hasn't got a something. Not one of us is perfect. Not one of us. Nobody, no matter who they are. And I defy anybody to say any different. And we all have a little soft spot. We all have whatever it is. And it doesn't matter what it was created by, but there is nothing loving at all. And we go back to Bethany's poem, which I listened to again today. There is nothing loving about identifying a soft, so I don't want to call it a weakness, you see, because it's not a weakness, but identifying a sensitivity in somebody you purport to care about and then exploiting that in order to gain something for yourself. There is nothing loving in that whatsoever. And getting your head around the fact that from day one, you've been targeted to be destroyed by somebody who said that they loved you is such a massive thing to get your head around. And yet our expectations of victims and survivors to do all of these things is astronomical. And we need to cut ourselves some slack and for people to cut us some slack as well.
It goes to the lack of empathy and the choices that they choose, and the idea that they have that ability to make those choices and lack that empathy in order to an entitlement. The list could go on in that realm. So I think we're going to wrap up for this one, and I'll see you on the other side. Hello! Thank you for watching our channel today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for any new content, and find us on Patreon and your favorite podcasts. We hope we're one of them. Bye-bye!